Mr. Gaetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to my colleague from Maryland, I would suggest he read John O. Calamar and Ibram Kendi, these self-avowed critical race theorists, because they have a definition that deviates from what my colleague laid before the committee. They hold the position that critical race theory is avowedly political, that it divorces from the objective, that viewing things as objectively right or objectively wrong is racist. I think presenting that to anyone who would potentially lead people in battle, as I know my colleague has, is wrong. And I don't think, to Mr. Courtney's point, that it's inappropriate for the House Armed Services Committee to reflect on the values that are being instilled in service members, or really in anyone that's putting the uniform on and fighting for our country. Critical race theory is a poison. It otherizes our fellow Americans. It is not what we need in our military, in our schools, in our lives, or anywhere in a great nation. And the reason we have to legislate around these things is because we got two different answers from Millie and Austin. We were all here when, in response to my question, Secretary of Defense Austin said, we don't teach critical race theory. There is no critical race theory in our service academies. And then lo and behold, Mr. Waltz had the receipts. He held up the curriculum that feeds into this notion of division among the races, which is a critique of the civil rights movement. If you really read a lot of the critical race theory text, it is a rejection of the values of Martin Luther King. They say that integration was wrong, that integration shouldn't have happened. Critical race theory is a vile incarnation of ethno-nationalism in America. And I reject ethno-nationalism, whether it comes from white people, black people, brown people, any other type of people. This is a great nation when we hold hands with one another and when we reject critical race theory. I thought it was something that when Mr. Waltz reflected on the specific professor that was offering instruction at the United States Military Academy on whiteness, that a cross-reference of that professor's writings suggests that the modern-day Republican Party is a white supremacist party. Would it be appropriate to have Republican lecturers making that point about Democrats? I don't think so at all. So I think that we should not become the school board. I don't think we need to get into the finer points of curriculum. But when our academies are teaching service members to hate one another, when the military is doing that, we have an obligation to stand up for the fundamental values of our nation. There's a difference between reading something as a lawmaker because you are trying to understand its context in pedagogy and society, and then having something delivered to you as a student in our military academies. And what my colleague's argument also ignores is there's an opportunity cost here. There's actually real stuff that these students need to be learning about cyber and about warfare and even other things that expand the mind. The problem is that this specific curriculum that the Banks Amendment identifies, chapter and verse, does not do those things. It does not expand the mind. It constrains the mind. It makes you think that we are a society where your grievance matters more than the contribution you can make. And that the immutable traits that a person carries with them through life do not make that person less valuable as an American. And the bank's provisions of exclusion localize a critique on that. It doesn't stop us from teaching history. It doesn't stop us from walking through the modernization of our Constitution to be more just and proper. I do believe it's probably important to recognize that even our founders in the Constitution understood that we would need to do other things to be a more perfect union, but that doesn't mean the Constitution is racist or our country is inherently, intractably racist. And that's what critical race theory teaches, and that's why it shouldn't be rejected. And the notion that we're able to read it, decipher it, and then reject it does not mean that there is just an endless opportunity of classroom time at our service academies to be able to push this vial. I thank the gentleman